friends, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and I wanted to share a little bit about what it is that I'm working on and hoping to work with. Ways to elevate our frequency and our vibration through a conscious awareness program, which essentially looks like using medicine as a modality to open up awareness. And what that's going to do is have both sides of the brain communicating to each other, dissolving beliefs that have created the circumstances in your life, like say for instance an autoimmune disease, reproduction organs, illnesses, or maladies. And so what we'll do is we'll create awareness through different exercises and modalities that will help us determine what new software system needs to be implemented in order to dissolve outdated beliefs. And we do that as a process, and it lasts about 8 weeks. And we look at different types of things that are living in your life, like your diet or your lifestyle or your beliefs surrounding, let's say, alcohol or prescription medication. And it's all based in what it is that you feel you need to move through and are unable to get through certain comfort zones. I am able to trigger you in ways that allow you to see that there is only a perception of threat, not an actual threat. And so when we're wanting to change, we have to be able to see ourselves clearly. And based on what we share and what you tell me will help me identify the types of mental work that can be done. And the way that we do that using medicine is that we get out of fight or flight and into a very deep and calm meditative state using sound and music. And then based on the desires that you have upon working together, we use those medicinal practices as a means to open up your consciousness so that we can invite healing, transformation, ideas, access to imagination, strengthened relationships, basically a new lens of perception. It's really important for me to share a defining experience in my life that I believe every single person on the planet somehow needs to experience. And I'm talking about an intentional medicinal journey. Back in 2016, I had an ayahuasca experience that would change my life forever. And during that experience, I had no idea how connected the soul is to the human experience. But because of all of the blinders that we have on, for instance, the accumulation of material goods or material wealth, we've lost sight of deep connection to both the place that we call home, our earth, and to each other. And so in this space, I lost my mind and connected my heart to my soul. And in my vision, I could see all the things that had ever happened to me in my life that were of significance or that I was holding on to. And in those visions, I was able to understand why these things had to take place in order for me to learn certain life lessons. And some people have gone through life not even knowing that life has been happening. And so they enter these medicinal realms, and so much relief and compassion is bestowed upon the person who journeys into the realm of consciousness. So to give you an example, or to put it into layman terms, humanity at this time operates on a very material conscious level, the three-dimensional plane. And when you drink medicinal substances that come from the planet, like fungi or ayahuasca or peyote or San Pedro or any of these master teachers, they give you access to higher levels of consciousness, which means you're kind of moving up a ladder to where the ego becomes less prominent and you understand the bounding tie of humanity and the necessity of reconnecting the parts of humanity that are disconnected, basically seeing another through the eyes of yourself and finding enormous amounts of compassion and forgiveness to the things that might have happened to you unknowingly. So for instance, the types of schools that we enter into and the programs that we decide to learn based on what our parents wanted us to learn or understand or facilitate in our world, or it depending on the socioeconomic class that you grew up in, you didn't have access to an education, so you entered or enrolled in the military to receive educational guidance, which then led you on a path of hopefully nothing too violent, but some military serviceman experience. and women experience a lot of violence, which takes a toll on the psyche. And when one gets to a certain point of development, they start to see that maybe their life isn't working and their beliefs need to be in question. And having a medicinal experience for me personally opened eyes to my own reality of how I was living. And essentially I had a vision where I was a bird in a golden cage, and the cage was very large. And this theme happens quite often to a lot of people who enter this higher levels of consciousness. Well, I was in the cage, and someone I care for very deeply had the key to the cage and was opening the lock for me to be able to fly out of. And now the door of the cage is open, and I sat there paralyzed on this little swing in this beautiful golden cage, unable to release myself from this self-created prison that I didn't even know I was a part of. And so the years that have progressed since that experience has taught me how important uncovering the subconscious mind is, and having a safe and sacred space in order to explore the subconscious mind so that we can set down stories that are preventing us from living our most highest beautiful potential. So my teachers did a really good job of preparing us before we drank the medicine. And when I drank the medicine, I had the mindset of total surrender, that no matter what would happen, I was given the right information to be able to soothe myself through a journey that I was set up to know is not always easy, can be challenging. And I was ready to do it because I felt safe. And so I remember drinking the medicine and immediately feeling connected to my body in ways that I had never felt before, and feeling it come alive. And what it feels like is like there are snakes traveling in through all of your circulatory system, and they're delivering this medicine from the gut into your bloodstream. And then there's periods of time where I would feel excruciating amounts of discomfort, like nausea beyond comprehension, and surrendering into the nausea and saying that I know this too shall pass, and I know I'm feeling this for a reason, and I trust this process. And there's this pull that is the grandmother medicine, in reference to the teacher that I learned from. Is the grandmother is the conduit. And so what do we think of when we think of grandmothers? Incredibly nurturing. So although you're experiencing this incredible amount of discomfort, you're the vessel that's carrying you through is this grandmother energy. And at some point, your consciousness, or your ego, I would say, my ego would start to tell me stories. And for instance, overanalyzing and being present and self-critique and all these loud noises for me personally would come up. And then the grandmother medicine would facilitate this like soothingness, and then the nausea would come up. And eventually I found myself over a bucket, purging all of these false beliefs I had about myself. And the purge is so uncomfortable, and yet at the same time you are releasing generations of beliefs. And it comes from personally, the stories I heard in my home, and the ways people spoke to me. And after the purge, I felt released from this enormous burden, and I would feel compassion for myself. Compassion to the point where I was crying profusely. And it felt like the tears were collective, like all the children who had ever gone through pain, who had ever been neglected, who had ever felt suffering at the hands of elders who didn't know what they were doing. And through that process, I could feel the collective conscious of suffering. And that experience gave me the insight into the amount of work needed to alleviate suffering on this planet, and how medicine is a catalyst and carrier of wisdom from the earth and from the ages. And so I felt like everyone I meet or know needs to know about this experience because of how illuminating it is, and how connecting it can create in your life, in your faith, but in faith in your own high spirit and the connection that you have to source. And I'll give you an example of an experience I had where I had, at the time, I perceived lots of problems with my own mother. and our relationship was incredibly tumultuous and has been for years and years. And this is someone that I care deeply about and love more than words can say. And in my ayahuasca ceremonies, there's a deep reverence for the person who birthed you, for the experiences that she went through that affected how she could mother. And after these experiences, I would contact my mom right after and tell her how I felt truly in my heart. And everything that had ever happened before would be dissolved, and we could have this compassionate dialogue of I love you and you love me, and I was doing my best, and I'm so sorry that I didn't know how that choice affected you. Or anyway, so these kinds of experiences allow us to regenerate brokenheartedness. And it isn't a one and done type of thing. The reason that we need community so much, and the reason why I needed the medicine to learn more and more from the medicine, was to establish a sense of community through these types of experiences. And it's because we can hold each other accountable in community. We can talk about things that are extremely challenging and hard, like how to get through to a loved one when there's been an estrangement. How do you process those feelings? Well, in these spaces and using some of these medicines, you're able to fold time so that something that you would be in therapy for 5 years, you could consciously resolve and work through, so that it doesn't create disease in the body within one session. So I became impassioned by my experience of accessing this divine realm and then bringing back the nuggets of wisdom that I received through my own lived experience, but also to anyone who would listen about how important this type of experience is and how it can live in our lives. And how once someone is able to move through enormous amounts of grief and suffering, they have access to creative channels. So if you're in a position where you're working in a career that does not feel like it serves you, you have the community and the conscious bandwidth to access parts of you that have never been able to be accessed because of the beliefs you have surrounding your worth, your finances, so on and so forth. Or we're able to resolve things like illness that has accumulated over time because of certain beliefs that you carry, that we're able to consciously look at those beliefs and then go, now I understand why that disease manifested in my body. It's an accumulation of these little beliefs and the inability to self-love and self-soothe and have nurturing relationships with others in a communal sense that allows us to really do leaps and bounds of self-awareness work to know ourselves better. It's really important to talk about what kind of opportunities are available to us through these experiencing non-ordinary states or psychedelic journeys or psychoactive assisted awareness is for women and also sensitive groups that are targeted by race and color, being imprisoned at a rate that's much more alarming than another demographic or group. And so there are huge opportunities for women to have safe space held for them in these experiences. And what I'm learning about is how to hold space for someone who has had a nervous system dysregulation or feels unsafe to lose control. Because essentially what we're working towards is having a safe enough space for you to lose control of your consciousness and to let your spirit guide your journey. And the way that we do that is by having a very safe space and by articulating what needs to happen before the actual experience for you to be able to learn how to hold space for yourself, knowing that you're safe to explore and open all the doors. So if you're wanting to work through a trauma from childhood, whether it's sexual abuse or physical or emotional or psychological abuse from any caretakers, that we're able to discuss all of the things that happen before our journey, so that when you are in the journey, you have the opportunity to open the door and see what's inside and decide that if it's something that you want to work through, that it will provide you with wisdom, or you can decide to soothe yourself, close that door, go on to the next door. And so you learn through our conscious dialoguing and regular integration work how to hold space for yourself so that you can become illuminated into getting the outcome of what you want, which is, if you're looking to heal a disease, you're able to understand what led to the manifestation of illness in the body, which is all happening on a subconscious or unconscious level, or if you are seeking to mate or become available for a committed relationship, and the stories that you have about yourself or the patterns of your past keep telling you that you're not lovable or that there isn't someone out there for you, we're able to work through perception limitations so that you can get past through the blocks and discover through this psychoactive process where in early childhood, where along your path did you become attached to thought patterns that have you believing something that's keeping you in a sticky place. And so as your coworker in this plan, I'm there to support you all along the way. So what's unique about what I bring to the table is I am here to nurture and support your process. And that's on an individual level. So if you invite me into your world and into the realm of the world that you would like to be a part of, I will nurture you through that process, through laughter, through illumination, through probing questions, through me being vulnerable myself and sharing how I got to work with certain medicines that allow us to access things that we couldn't possibly access on our own. And in that, we'll be able to share a connected space where you will feel vibrationally that I am your biggest champion, that I am your sounding board. I am someone who is here to help you see the highest version of yourself and to allow you to forgive yourself for the mistakes that you've made in the past or the regrets that you think you have. This process will allow you to see how everything is divinely orchestrated and how I will validate your experience so that you can feel on a soul, heart, mind level that you are on the right track and that your happiness and your destiny is within your own making. And I am here to cheer you on every step of the way.